Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. Hope you're having a good one. Um, Hope that your world is as perfect and organized and well ordered as that uh, best potential image in your brain could be. And I hope that you feel super great and positive and the world is shining on you and all of that good stuff. Um, Hello, my name is Shane, and we do history stuff. It's time for history. That's right. Everybody's favorite subject in high school, where you had your favorite teachers and certainly learned a truly global perspective on the history of the species Homo sapiens. Because you never had history in high school, you had social studies. Well, yeah, that's interesting. What up, Green Herring? Soup, how's it going? Moose, what's up, my friend? Um, like, you didn't have any history classes at all, like, not even U.S. history or world history. They were just, like, 4 classes of social studies for 4 years. Because that's interesting. I had 1 year of world history because, you can do all of world history in 1 year because who cares about the world? And then I had U.S. history, which was also given an entire year. Because, just U.S. history is clearly as equal to world history. And then I had my senior year, I had government economics. In my ninth grade year, I had Mississippi history, which is a state history for a semester, and then I have world geography for a semester. So it was a varied historical experience. We'll just put it that way. My best history teacher that I've ever had was in 5th and 6th grade. I had the same history teacher for 5th and 6th grade. And then it was all the way until college. Main subjects I remember from our history classes: wars. Yeah, pretty much like World War One, World War Two. Yeah. Yeah. World War Two especially gets a lot of love. World War One in the United States does not get nearly as much attention as it should. World War One is a big, big deal and still has a lot of impact on how global politics and things like that work today. And it's glossed over. World War One might get 2 or 3 lessons out of a World Civ class, and everybody just learns the same list of like the reasons why the United States got involved in the war. And it's like the sinking of the Lusitania and the Zimmerman telegram and da 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 da. Yeah. Amazing that Franz Ferdinand started World War One and then became a pop rock band nearly 8 years later. Yeah, in the dark of the matinee, and Eleanor, put your boots back on. I actually really like Franz Ferdinand. Well, let me pause. I really like Franz Ferdinand's old stuff. After about their third or maybe their fourth album, they went off on some very new tangent that I did not care to follow them down. I mean, respect, you go do your thing as an artist. I don't have a problem with people changing their tones overall. I just don't have to like that when you change it, so it's fair. They got very radio friendly after a little while, and that to me killed a lot of their indie feel. Their vibe changed. So, I mean, I still listen to a lot of their stuff, but money, it's a crime. Indeed. Indeed, indeed. You got to go where the earballs are, right? So, that's history of pop music in the early 2000s. So we are going to talk tonight about China. Specifically, again, we have entered a new phase. This is phase 13, and we are discussing specifically the 8th century. So again, this is the year 700 to the year 799. And we are looking at this regionally. So tonight we're going to be looking at China. And specifically for China, at this point, the ruling dynasty, well, I should actually say that there has been an interruption. The larger ruling dynasty was the Tang dynasty, but where we pick up tonight, that had actually been momentarily disrupted by an empress named Wu Zetian. Which chapter did we cover in Star Wars if it was a long time ago? We would have to do prequel episodes to talk about Star Wars, Moose. And we all know how prequel episodes to talk about Star Wars stuff goes, right? Exactly, like, oh crap. We'd have to do like negative episodes for history, Adventures in History. At least the poster would be cool. That's true, and there'd be some really great music. I will contend that Duel of the Fates that played in the background of like Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul and Obi-Wan's lightsaber battle is one of the best Star Wars pieces ever. I really love Duel of the Fates. It's a great song. I mean, it's not, the Imperial March, but it's good stuff, and they were on point in that particular aspect. They had a lot of good music. Did I make that animation myself? No, I didn't. That was done for the channel by an artist named Color by Emmy. And I will give Emmy a shout out. If you see Emmy, or if you want to, you can go give Emmy a follow. Emmy does stream art here on Twitch. Emmy actually helped me redesign the layout here. I kind of had the where I wanted things to go, but like gave me the cool little piece of paper thing right here and the notepad thing right here, and did the little adventure chain down there in the corner, and did the entry starting soon page. So did all of that stuff and was incredibly helpful. So really cool. I definitely encourage everybody to go give him a follow. And it was the duel of Anakin's fate. Whoever won would guide the future. Correct. Crawls in and pretends to be alive. Lumpy, I feel you. I know that I'm alive this week because of all of the pain. Right? I cannot doubt that I am alive because I feel too painful. It's been a really long week. But I'm okay. It's just like it's starting to grind, I hope you're doing okay as well, Lumpy. I know that you had a busy week this week as well. And if you're not following my friend Lumpy, I don't know why you aren't. Go follow this guy. Watch him build beautiful things in Minecraft and show up for all the good puns. Eat more collagen. I had taco soup tonight. I don't know if that has collagen in it or not. I'm going to just sip my tea. It's still very, very hot. It's steaming. I don't know if you can tell that it's steaming, but it's good tea. Okay, so it's a biomed engineering joke. Is this to hold you up? Is this to give you structure? So like collagen is a fixative or a formative molecule that makes things in order. I mean, I could kind of get that, but I wasn't absolutely expecting that. And if I've got that wrong, you're absolutely welcome to explain the joke for me. Everybody knows that when you explain a joke, it makes it infinitely more funny. So, all right. Anyway, you could jump into Twitch's foam pit so you could have an added structure to your back. Ooh. Not interested, because I've heard that foam pit isn't actually a pit. It's just foam blocks on top of a concrete slab. And only one layer of the foam blocks. Just that collagen is notoriously difficult to graft, to give, or to inject. I see. That makes sense. Gotcha. Okay. Anyway. Since the 600s, we have been dealing with a dynasty here called the Tang Dynasty. They took over in the early part of the 600s, and they had been pretty good about ruling things through the end of the 600s. But right at the end of the 600s and into the beginning of our discussion today, they had been taken over by an empress whose name was Wu Zetian, and here she is. Now, technically, she sets up a new dynasty and calls it the Wuzhou dynasty, but it's not really a dynasty because she's really the only one that has any power. It would work if people spread out their weight like a belly flop, but a cannonball would be painful. Yep. And I miss having more than I do now. I see. Yeah, collagen is what keeps your skin taut, right? And the loss of collagen is what makes wrinkles and stuff happen. Or at least that's what I've been led to believe. Anyway, so Empress Wu is ruling at this point, and she is a big in charge kind of person. And specifically here, she had sort of usurped the throne because of some weak leadership in the Tang dynasty, and she is going to basically take over by pushing her son off the throne. Her son's name was Zhongzhong, and he looks like this, which is a pretty poor image of him. But that was him, and he gets pushed off, and so she gets put on the throne, and she's gonna, well, she basically was sitting on the throne anyway, so she runs the country for a little while. But she was trying to change things pretty substantially here, especially because in this particular position of empress, China had a bad run when it came to empresses and stability long term. Typically, what was happening when China ended up with a ruling empress was a family who had married into the imperial household was trying to usurp power from the ruling family, right? So, like if we had the McKinnises, and I married my wife, and then my wife's family tried to come and take over my kingdom. That's what happens in many situations where we end up with a ruling empress. And that was what was going on here, was that Han was, had married the emperor, actually had married a prince, and, ended up becoming empress. And then she and her family were trying to, push out all of the members of the existing royal family, the dynasty that was running the Tang at the point. And there are a lot of enemies that she had made for herself along the way. And those particular high-ranking officials aren't very pleased when it comes to her trying to push them all out of power. And they're going to basically gang up on her and end up pushing her off of the throne. And in the process, they bring back her son. And they reestablish the Tang dynasty. And again, and this guy's name is Zhongzhong. I did misspell dynasty. Dynasty. It looked right in my brain, but dyslexia is a thing. In other news, I am old. Even my autocorrect software makes middle-aged choices. Well, that's fair. What's up, Tropical? Good to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. So anyway, again, this is Zhongzhong. He's now emperor again. But let's be real. This dude was emperor while his mom was in charge, and then his mom pushed him off of the throne and basically retired him. And then the nobles got tired of his mom and pushed her off the throne and put him back on the throne. This guy's not really in charge, right? He's a puppet. And he had never ruled China by himself. He had always ruled either under the regency of somebody or under the direction of somebody. And when his mom dies, he's going to end up falling under the sway of his wife. And specifically here, his wife and her concubine, it's kind of the wrong word for it, but her mister instead of her mistress. So his wife was running around on the emperor, and she and her lover were basically trying to usurp the kingdom from him again. And in the process of this, he sort of gets a little angry, like, when do I get to run the country by myself? You know, like, when do I get to be the actual emperor? And it seems like his wife and her lover didn't really care for this particular point of view, so they poisoned him. Yep. One way to get rid of the emperor is to just assassinate him. So at this point, the Tang Dynasty is it's just assassin. At this point, the dynasty is being run by Empress Wei, and Zhongzhong is dead. Now, they do put a kid on the throne, and this little kid is not even Empress Wei's child. It's another kid from another one of the emperor's marriages, and they put him on the throne with an attempt at basically running the country through this kid. That, however, gets problematic because Zhongzhong had a sister who was a princess. Her name was Princess Taiping. Now, if you're going to be in the imperial household and all of the women are running the show, if you're the princess, you're the sister of the emperor, maybe you think that you should be in charge instead of a two-timing empress, or your mother-in-law or your mom or whomever. And Princess Taiping gets really sick of Empress Wei. Here's the thing, though. Empress, princess, right? There's a distinction of title here that is problematic. So what do we do? Well, Princess Taiping wants to run the country. She wants to be in charge. So how to handle this? Well, you got to get rid of Empress Wei and her boy toy. So you cook up a whole bunch of false information about them, and you lead a coup against them. And so they did. And in the process of leading this coup, the princess is going to get Empress Wei killed. And, so how do you get rid of a princess? Well, you kill them. Because that's what we do in China, right? You kill the people in charge. So this, of course, is going to mean that they basically retire the kid that had been on the throne. And a Princess Taiping is going to decide that they need another emperor. So not the puppet that this other family put in charge, but the puppet that they want. And so they decide, like her and her conspirators decide to go back to an older emperor. At this point, a guy that was well past his prime and had been one of the puppet emperors under Wu Zetian. This guy's name is Rizong. And so they pull him out of retirement. And they go, we need a puppet ruler. And as a way to establish our authority and say that we've been in power all along, we're going to go get the guy that got kicked off of the throne way back when and had been forcibly retired, and we're going to put him back on the throne. And Ruizong, by this point, was well into his adulthood and kind of on later in life. But he's going to get put back on the throne. Like, hey, back on the throne. This is 710, by the way. And he's going to get a good couple of years of being a puppet from Princess Taiping. Being in charge is literally quite deadly. It is. Recording all of that while it happened must take some courage. Forget kung fu masters, behold the courage of the scribe. Yeah, so we have a lot of these records, and what's really interesting about a lot of these Chinese records is it's pretty clear that you don't get to write the history while the people are living. You see these come in little spurts where the writers will be commissioned to write history after a lot of stuff happens. Like everybody's dead, so we need to record what was going on here. You don't really write while stuff is going on, because then the emperor in charge, of course, will want final copy edit of what's going to be published, especially if they're the ones commissioning you for the history in the first place. And to be fair, there are quite a few of these sort of highly sanitized official imperial versions of history that do get published in China during this time. So China's government manipulating the media feed is not a new experience. This has been going on in China for millennia. It's a pretty clear effort here to show certain versions of stuff. So Rizong is on the throne, and he's another guy that had never really ruled by himself. So he had a few years back in the 690s that he was on the throne, and then he got retired for about 12 years, and so he's making a comeback. And what is he going to do? Well, he basically sits on the throne and worries for his life. This, by the way, is Rizong. He's kind of paranoid. And if you look at the events that led ultimately to him taking the throne, you might be paranoid too, because exactly as he should. So everybody kind of knows that there are all of these machinations going on in the background. There are all of these nobles and all of these generals and all of these in-laws and all of these, imperial family members, and they're all trying to pull strings and line up behind the scenes stuff and get assassinated and all this fun stuff. Anyway, so Rizong is very paranoid. And Princess Taiping is actually running most of the show here. She's sort of making the decisions and going to him and saying, here's what you need to do. Now, what's really interesting here is this plot that she has. There's a particular member of the sort of broader imperial clan that was making a lot of noise. And Taiping sort of wanted to get rid of this guy. And this, by the way, is all recorded in the sources, and it's pretty interesting stuff here. So according to the histories that we have, she decided that she needed to cook up a plot to get rid of this guy, this potential claimant to the throne. And so she sits down and she meets with a lot of people, and she decides that one of the things that she's going to go with is this plan to declare bad omens. This period of time in China is heavy with the astrological predictions, the use of magical amulets for protection. Hiring sorcerers to curse other people was a big thing during this time. And Rizong was super paranoid already. So she gets this plan. She's going to go to the emperor and tell him, I have seen in the heavens, and I've had it confirmed by the court astrologer, that someone, that there's going to be a change in the imperial throne. And what she was trying to do was she was trying to get him to go, oh, wait, somebody's going to try to usurp me, and I should go look for who this was. And then she was going to provide evidence against this troublemaker and get him either killed or exiled or demoted or whatever. But Ruizong, being so paranoid, goes, oh, wait, there's astrological signs, and there's going to be a change in the emperor. And she's like, oh yeah, and you should really be careful, because there might be something out there, out to get you. And Ruizong's like, oh, so what the heavens are telling me is that I need to go find my successor. And she's like, well, no, that's not it. And he goes, I'm going to go find my successor. And she's like, that's not what no. And she can't just say, you're interpreting it the wrong way. I wanted you to go kill this guy. And in what can be only summed up as ultimate irony, what ends up happening is Rizong goes to the guy that Taiping was trying to get killed, and he gives up the throne to this guy. This guy's name is Emperor Xuanzong. So the very guy that Tai Ping was hoping the emperor would kill, instead he goes, "Look, you're the most trusted person except for me in the government, and I trust that you'd be a good emperor, and the stars are telling me that it's my time to be done. I need to give you the throne." And Xuanzong is like, so I'm going to be emperor? And Rizong's like, yeah, because like, there are these signs in the heavens, and there are like all of these like portents and stuff. So you need to take over the emperor, position of emperor. And this guy's like, well, that's what I wanted anyway. So like, yeah. Well, see, the thing is, apparently, and again, this is probably dramatized, but apparently Rizong did not suspect this guy at all. And that Xuanzong had been so smooth in his playing that Rizong thought that he was a trustworthy individual that would do really well running the government. So Tai Ping gets really upset. She's like, "You gave the empire to whom?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah. Look, this guy, and you know this guy because you're around him all the time. He's going to be really good. He's going to be a really good emperor. He's a really smart guy. Also, I'm going to quit." Because, I mean, who wants to get stabbed, right? Nonchalantly waving a dagger, right? I'm going to find my successor so hard. Somebody call HBO. Yeah, this is very dramatic, right? It's always the one you least suspect. This is true. What's up, Junk Collector? Being emperor must have come with amazing perks to offset the short lifespan. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think it balances out. Anyway, so when Rizong gives up the title of emperor, Tai Ping is really upset with this, and she goes to him and goes, "Okay, look, man. So I see that you gave up the empire. You gave it to somebody that I wouldn't have picked, but that's okay. What you need to do, and you should really consider this. Now, you have officially passed the throne, and maybe the stars said that you should, that there was going to be an imperial change, but maybe that doesn't mean there has to be an imperial shift in power. So you can be retired emperor, which actually was a position, right? He had already been retired emperor for a long time in that interregnum period. So if you wanted to, you could still be retired emperor, and you could still have some power, and you could still have some say-so in the government, because, this guy that you put in charge, he's going to need somebody to help him learn the ropes of being emperor. And Rizong is like, okay, that actually doesn't sound that bad. I wouldn't mind still kind of hanging around the palace and doing stuff every now and then. And so what we have here is a situation where Tai Ping is still going to try to run the government through Ruizong as retired emperor, while Xuanzong is actually trying to run the country by himself. And as you suspect, this is not going well. All of this happens, Lumpy, over the span of about 2 years. It's not a long period of time. About 2 years. We don't quite need the Benny Hill theme, but it's close enough. It's close enough. So Wu Zetian got run off the throne in 705. And between 705 and now, we've had 3 different emperors. So 3 emperors in 7 years, which is not, that's not a lot of time. It's an intense HBO season to pay. Right. We'll stop after a few episodes, and we'll replace all of the children with with young adult characters, and we'll just call it the same season, right? I've heard that works in HBO shows now. So the thing about Xuanzong is he rules for a long time. A long time. He gets the throne in 712. He's going to be on the throne until 756. Now, he's not going to have a very easy go of it. when he first takes over the throne, he's in a lot of arguments because he wants to do things his way because he's the emperor. Ruizong is trying to play this weird game where he's trying to still be valid and important, but everything that he does is getting whispered into his ear by Princess Taiping, and everything that he says is a way to try to make sure that Xuanzong is actually still considered the emperor. Because here's the thing about it. It appears, if you read the text here, that Ruizong was actually a pretty decent guy. May have made some dumb decisions, may have been way too easy to manipulate, but it seems like he wasn't a horrible butt of a person. He tried to make decisions based on data that he had. He was really easy to hoodwink, though, and he also didn't always like to make Xuanzong look bad because he did sort of already see Xuanzong as the emperor, so he didn't want to, like, he still wanted to do some influencing, be the power behind the throne thing, but he also didn't want to kind of, fully usurp power and make Xuanzong his own puppet, because it doesn't really seem like Ruizong was that kind of person. So we've got this weird trifecta of power here, and Princess Taiping is constantly trying to get rid of Xuanzong. She tries to get him killed in battle. She concocts this big scheme where he needs to take this little force of soldiers and go way up north along the border and do all of these inspections of these border things. And this was in the light of a whole bunch of invasions by the Khitan people and some other invasions by people like the very last remnant of the Go Turks and then later the Uyghurs. And the idea was he was going to go up there with this honor guard, basically, and then they were all going to abandon him in light of brigands or something like that and get him killed, and that plan fell through. She ended up trying to get him stripped of power multiple times. She apparently went to Ruizong with multiple plots to try to say that this guy was not fit for being emperor, like, oh, he's hiring sorcerers, or, he is breaking your edicts, and he's trying to kill you. And she just tries to concoct all of this stuff. And what actually gets her is she decides to enlist a whole bunch of people in a plot to poison Xuanzong. He min-maxed when playing D&D, right? Pretty much. So she's going to try to get him poisoned. And this is going to be like the end of the road for her. Did she resort to painting a fake tunnel on the cliffside like Wile E. Coyote so that he runs into it and crashes himself? No, because what would have happened is that Taiping would have painted this, and Ruizong would have taken that as a sign to build a tunnel through this mountain. So when Xuanzong ran at it, it would actually be a tunnel, and then Taiping would have had to watch him run all the way through the tunnel just shaking her head. Because that's just kind of the way that it operated. Like, Ruizong is kind of like this good dude that, like, just he can't help but being a good person sometimes, even when he does really horrible things other times. Because, I mean, he is a tool, right? He's not a wise or bright individual. He gets played all the time and ends up getting a lot of people killed by an edict, or puts a lot of innocent people in jail, has a lot of innocent people like decapitated or hung, or forces them to commit suicide. So it's not like he's the world's best guy, but he's also not like, I don't know, he's a lot like Catcher in the Rye, if you know that story. I don't want to spoil all of the stuff, but you know what I'm talking about there. He's a good-natured dude that doesn't really know what he's doing, and he gets in trouble. So what we have here is a situation where Taiping decides, I'm going to poison the emperor. And she gets this plan. She's going to put all this plan together. She's going to poison the emperor. And this is going to finally tip off Xuanzong that she's behind all, and he kind of suspected her all along, but he's going to have proof now. Like he has proof that she's behind this, and she's got all these groups of people with her, and Xuanzong starts putting out these edicts that all of these people be arrested, and if they are arrested, they get put on trial and they get killed. And in the process of this, he is going to put out one for Taiping herself, which is not a small feat, right? Again, she is a princess of the imperial household. Issuing an edict for her arrest and trial is not a small feat. And this all happens pretty quickly. Like, Xuanzong finds out about the poison stuff. He passes a bunch of these edicts really, really fast. All of these people, these conspirators, are in the capital city. So he's basically sending his bodyguard out to go catch all these people. And he gets a lot of them killed pretty quick. And when Rizong finally figures out what's happening, it's because Taiping runs up to him and goes, "Did you see what this guy did? He passed an edict for me to be arrested and tried." And he goes, "Well," and this is Rizong, and he goes, why did he do that?" And she's like, "Because he said that I was conspiring to poison him." And Rizong's like, "Well, I mean, were you? Because you don't like him." And she's like, "Yes, but that's not that big of a deal." And what happens here is that Rizong goes, "Oh, well, I mean, if you're trying to kill him, yeah, that's a good edict. You should just go to jail for that and be put on trial." And Rizong publicly backs the edicts, right? And beyond that, he decides, you know what, I'm kind of tired of being in the middle of this. So he passes another edict that basically says, "I am going to retire from being retired emperor. I don't want any more power. I don't want to be involved in any more, state decisions. I pass full unilateral authority to Xuanzong." And this is like the end of the day for Taiping. So Taiping is going to get arrested. She's going to get put on trial, and she gets ordered to commit suicide, which she does. And in the process of this, Xuanzong decides to get probably a bit more vengeance than he needed to, and so he goes and kills most of her male family members as well. Because, if you're going to get rid of an imperial branch that's causing trouble, you don't just kill the problematic ones, you kill the ones that might be problems in the future too. Again, this is very much a Chinese thing to do. You find somebody that's bad and you kill them, and then you kill all their male heirs. And that's kind of a final decision of time to go. Now, in the process of this, people kind of go like, "Oh crap, this dude's for real now," because he's in charge and he's killing folk. Like he's doing the murder train. And he also, this is Xuanzong. I guess I can take both of these people off now. So Xuanzong by himself ruling, and he also confiscates all of Taiping's value, like all of her family's ownership of stuff and all of her money and all of the stuff that her kids had and her sons had. And this is some gigantic amount of wealth, because apparently she had been hoarding money the whole time. And I guess I should show you Xuanzong. So here he is. So this is Emperor Xuanzong. Anyway, so he gets this big influx of cash, and things for a little while go pretty good. Again, he's ruling for like 42 years. So this guy's got a little while, 44 years. He's got a good run of things. Now, again, at the beginning, it was rough. Then he had some okay years in the middle. Did his hat allow him to fly? Maybe if he ran really, really fast, he could get a little bit of lift off of that. But I don't think that the wingspan is broad enough, and I don't think that he could produce enough forward motion for the under the hat lift effect to give him much upward movement. But maybe if he jumped off of a cliff, he would be able to glide for a little bit. But probably not too much faster. They said the same thing about swallows and their ability to transport coconuts. It's not a matter of where he grips it. It's a simple matter of weight ratios. Anyway, also, hey, Kyle, good to see you. So he gets a little bit of time where things are okay. And then the external problems start, because let's remember, China is a big country with a lot of people around them that all want their stuff. And unfortunately for Xuanzang, the vast majority of his remaining years as emperor is going to be spent fighting bad guys. Or according to them, bad guys, of course. So up in the north, there are these people called the Khitan, and we talked about them a little bit last week, but as a refresher, if you weren't here, sort of in this region right here, you have a group of people that are called the Khitan, and they were a type of horseback nomadic or semi-nomadic individual people that had been causing a lot of trouble here in northern China, also over here in the emergent Balhae state that was over here in Korea. And they're sort of doing raids down here into the north, and that's problematic. So he sends an army up to try to fight these people, and the army gets crushed. They take somewhere between 80 and 90% casualties, and they come home utterly humiliated and utterly defeated, and that's not good. Because when you do that, other people are like, China is weak. So who's going to invade next? Well, Tibet. Now, in last phase, we introduced Tibet as an imperial power of their own. This is going to be a good time for Tibet. This 8th century is a really powerful time for Tibet, and this is sort of the beginning of their ascendancy, because they're going to start raiding along their border, which runs, well, you can kind of see where it runs. Basically right around here, right? So this is the Tibetan Empire over here, and here is your Chinese Empire over here, and this region is going to be fighting this region. And they're going to, at this point in time, be fairly evenly matched. And what ends up happening is that they'll have a lot of these border skirmishes where the Tibetans are going to send a small raid in to try to get a fort or some territory, and then the Chinese will push them out. And then the Chinese send a raid back over to try to recover something or push the borders back, and they get defeated and they push them back out. And there's this sort of constant scuffling along the border here for this moment. Later on, things are going to change. All right, so Tibet is a problem. Now, we have mentioned that China had extended all the way over here into the Tarim Basin region. So there's this sort of weird, homeland of China here, and they had this kind of weird arm appendage that stretched out this direction, and they were trying to project their power here into this region right here, and even into Central Asia. The puppy is outside and just woofed at something very, very loudly. I don't know if you all heard that. So over here, we actually have the Umayyads. So these are the Arab Umayyad Muslim imperialists who had expanded into what used to be Persia. And there are actually quite a few scuffles along this border out this way and into Central Asia between China and the Umayyads. Because everybody wants to hold on to these big trade cities. And the Umayyads, and then later the Abbasids, after an event that we'll cover later on in this phase in the seventh, that's later. There's a split in the Muslim world, and we have this new thing called the Abbasid Caliphate. So China's fighting a lot, and they're fighting a lot of people. Now, in this process, Emperor Xuanzang has a difficult decision to make. First off, what do you do about this constant fighting? It's very expensive to keep troops in the field year-round. it's also very expensive to hold this giant honkin' chunk of territory. And it's a lot. Let me show you this here. So this is a map of what they controlled under Xuanzang. And this is sort of the height of the Tang Dynasty here. You can see over here, so the brown stuff is the Tang Dynasty. You can see here the Khitans. Here's the Tibetans, right? Now, this is a chunk of territory that is enormous. It is absolutely gigantic. It was the largest empire on Earth at the time. That's almost as distant as when England held land in France. Oh, you mean like right across the channel, which is like you can look across it with your naked eye? One of the reasons I'm here is to learn cool archaeological terms like big ol' honkin'. Hey, that's a Shmonite. That is an accurate term. Good to see you, Shmonite. I hope you're having a good one, my friend. These are historically accurate and Shane approved. Technically, so here's the thing. Technically speaking, I have magical pieces of paper that say that I'm a historian. So you can say historian, or I have heard a historian use this phrase, which would mean that it is an actual historical phrase. So you just got to find the right way to look at this in a pedantic sort of way. Anyway, Xuanzang has problems. How do we hold all of this territory? And it's hard. It's really hard. One of the problems was that at this point in time, the Tang Dynasty was ruling over a gigantic chunk of varied ethnic groups, right? So we have what they would call the sort of traditional Han Chinese groups. They have people down in the south all the way as far as like Da Viet, which is in modern day, Vietnam. They have people that are up into the Korea region. So they've got Khitan people, they've got Mohe people, they've got some Tibetan people, they've got Khitans that are under their control. They've got Turks that have moved in. They've got Uyghurs that are in their area. So it's like there are all of these varied ethnic groups. And one of the things that a lot of these people didn't care for was the fact that they were being dominated by a different ethnic group that didn't really reflect them. Now, it's fair to note here that our modern concept of racism is very, very different than ancient concepts of ethnic differences. So what we're talking about here is not something where one group is trying to make a scientific argument for the betterness or the goodness of a particular group of people because of their their race. Our modern concept of race is really only something that comes out of the Enlightenment. What they're looking for here is they're not living the same way that we're living, and their way of life is not our way of life, and we're not giving anything into the larger scenario here. We're being dominated and told that we have to live in another way. So it's much more of a cultural and ethnic situation there instead of like a racial and ethnic thing. But these different ethnic groups all wanted to be recognized by the Chinese authority because they were the gravimetric center of Asia, right? If you got recognized by the Tang Dynasty and the Tang Dynasty would back you up, that is a huge deal for a lot of these groups that are on sort of the peripheral borders of these areas, because that's going to give you an ultimately large amount of legitimacy, right? The Emperor of China says that I'm king of this territory. Also, because of this expansion of power and territory, there were a lot of people that were in the larger Chinese noble ruling class that had become very powerful, especially off of trade and skimming off of trade, and the manipulation of land and tax breaks and things like that were creating sort of a noble superclass. And in this process, Xuanzang was losing control of especially the peripheral regions, so the regions that were along the borders. And he got some pretty bad advice from one of his top advisors. And the advice was, I've got this idea. What if we took a lot of our armies and put them under the control of non-Chinese generals? So if we're going to go have a border region that has a lot of Turkish population, why don't we make a general of the Chinese army in that area a Go-Turk? Or if we're going to have a region that is Sogdian, which is sort of like that Central Asia region, why don't we have a general that is Sogdian? What about a Khitan, right? Or what about a Mohe? And a lot of these peripheral border regions that were where most of the fighting was end up getting put under the control of non-Chinese generals. So this is for two reasons. Number one, there was this thought of, well, if those people see one of their own people leading an army, maybe that will make them think differently about the leadership of China. Maybe they'll look at the emperor and go, oh man, I didn't know that we could get promoted. I didn't know that there was a way for us to sort of fit into the larger panoply of Chinese government. Maybe we need to reconsider. Maybe we should be friendly with this guy. So that's one of the reasons. Also, if you're not picking from this bloated, overpowered Chinese nobility, these people that are much less likely to have crazy large amounts of money and be out for your head are going to be much more behooven unto you, right? They're going to go, oh crap, dude, this is a great promotion. This is a great opportunity for me. The emperor chose me to put me in charge of this military and this army. So this is a great deal. And this is going to lead to a period of time where the Tang Dynasty is actually hitting what could be described as a golden age. There's going to be a lot of peace. There's a lot of architecture that comes out of this. There's a lot of art that comes out of this. I actually grabbed a piece of art, and I'll show this to you, and then I'll let you see if you see it, and then I will tell you why I chose this particular photo itself to show you as an example of Chinese silk art. Maybe you'll see it. Exactly. Because it has chunky horses. Indeed. Especially this guy. This dude right here is like chonk plus 5, right? It's because of the chunky horse. It's the chunky horse, right? So, but anyway, this is actually a really pretty painting here. This is a silk painting that was on a big screen. This is authentic. This is actually the original painting itself. So you can see people dressed up, both men and women here, in the dress of the time. There's a kid here riding with its mother. So, I mean, what this is telling us is that first off, there are people that have enough time to do beautiful artwork like this. Also, that there are people that are out doing things for leisure. Horses, the bane of artists since the 8th century, right? But when we're seeing images of leisure and we're seeing people just having fun and doing things, this is kind of a larger emblematic example of things were going pretty good for a little while. But only for a little while, because we all know that things aren't going to end up well. I mean, it's history. Things always end up getting poopy eventually. And the particular guy that makes it poopy is this guy named An Lushan. Yep, we can't always have the good times. Sometimes we have to have the bad times. This is An Lushan. And you go, well, that guy doesn't look very Chinese. And you would be correct, because he's not Chinese. This guy was a goat. Sorry, good gracious. This guy's a Go-Turk. This is why we can't have that. Like this right here really is why we can't have nice things. Also, if you might note, he's a big old dude, and we'll talk about. Well, I guess we could talk about that now. An Lushan was massively obese. there are all kinds of really horrible stories about how fat this guy was. Now, let's be clear. He's going to do some pretty horrible things. So, our stories about how fat he was could be exaggerated as a way to make him look even more villainous after the fact. And some of these stories are pretty rough. For example, one of the stories says that he decided that he wanted to go out riding, and he didn't have his horse with him, so he wanted to borrow a horse from somebody else. And it was a kind of a small horse, and when he got on the top of the horse, he crushed it with his own weight. So, did that really happen? Probably not. He probably did not crush a horse with his own weight. That's a lot. But all accounts that this guy was a really big dude. So, of course, this at the time was seen as a sign of gluttony and excess and greed, and like he was just he's portrayed negatively across the board. But why? Well, here's the thing. He starts off not so bad. He starts off as a general. He's one of these new generals on the border zones, right? He's a Go-Turk. He's going to be put in charge of the military. And right off the bat, he's trying to make a name for himself. He's trying to prove that he's worth the shot. And he kind of disobeys some orders and gets an army massacred in a really poorly planned attack. And he ends up, within the first couple of years of his command, having to go down to see the emperor. This is in the 740s. I think this is 748. So he has to go see the emperor, and the emperor's like, dude, what the devil? You're not supposed to do this. And he was supposed to be executed. But apparently, Xuanzang kind of liked the dude. And he played this I'm an outsider, so I don't understand things game pretty well. Like, oh, I'm not Chinese. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to go do that. In my world, we do it this way. And that's kind of his go-to excuse. Like, oh, I didn't know that. So, pound for pound, our worst general. Oh. So, he doesn't get executed. He talks his way out of execution. He charms his way out of execution. And he gets sent back to the border zone as a demoted person. So he's not a general anymore. He gets demoted way down the ranks. But once he had met the emperor, he starts trying to make every excuse that he can to go back to the capital. And this dude starts sucking up to the emperor real hard. And he's going to end up getting promoted to this particular rank called Jiadushi, which is it's kind of like a provincial governor and a military general that's kind of rolled into one. One of the things that Xuanzang had done as an attempt to try to stabilize these border regions was basically put them under quasi-military rule, not like full-out military rule, because Jiadushi had some governmental power as well, some regulatory power, some judicial power. This is almost like he's making little emperors on a small scale and kind of sending them out to these border regions to sort of handle all these problems that pop up really quickly. You don't want to have to go all the way back to the capital, say, hey, this bad thing is happening, and then go all the way back out. You need somebody that has the ability to make some decisions out there. And there were very few of these. There were like 10 or 12 of these total in the entire empire, because these were supposed to be like the closest advisors. So this is a big promotion for An Lushan. Well, he gets that position. And then he starts sucking up a lot because he's doing all of this stuff along the border. So he has access to all these rare things and all these big trade stuff. And he starts sending presents back to the emperor. And every time he goes back, he brings him a gift. And it's like, my emperor, your humble Go-Turk servant, I bring you these cool things. And, Xuanzang is like, look at this guy. It's that guy again. Hey, do that thing again where you don't know how things work around here. Make me laugh. Hey. So An Lushan weasels his way into the confidence of the emperor. And then he goes, look, emperor, I love you so much. You're my bro. Would you consider having one of your concubines adopt me as a son. Now, I don't want to be like, I don't want to be presumptuous and say, make me a prince, but like, let one of your concubines adopt me as a son so that I can still be in your household and you can look on me like a son. And the emperor's like, oh, this guy, look at everybody, look at this guy. He's like, yeah, I'll get one of my concubines to adopt you. So this dude gets adopted into the imperial household. And this is like step one of or step 3 or 4 of like a 50-step plan, because this guy ultimately wants to be emperor. Everybody wants to be emperor at this point. So, Amla Shan's like doing his thing. And so he's like, okay, cool, check this out. I'm in the government and I'm going to go do some cool stuff. And I got adopted by a concubine of the emperor. So I'm like kind of his son. How old was he at this point? He was about the same age as the emperor. He might have actually been a little bit older. But he's just playing the game really well. And he's doing this like, oh, look at me, I'm ignorant because I'm a Goturk. I'm an outsider. Don't think of anything of me. I'm just the big fat guy that everybody laughs at. Ha ha ha! Look at the big fat guy. And apparently the emperor liked to make fun of him because he was so fat. And he was just kind of like good natured about it. Like, oh yes, I am giant, aren't I? That's a good one, emperor. I'm full of food, and if you poke me in the stomach, I'm going to vomit up a whole pig. That's how fat I am. Just really hamming it up, right? So it's a big, messy situation. And he eventually gets the emperor to promote him to prince. And this guy, again, he's not even Chinese, but now he's a prince. So he's officially like in the inner circle. How to make a supervillain 101. It was a big mess. Yeah, it was a big messy situation. So once he gets the title prince, he's going to go back out and he goes, okay, well, cool. I'm like as high as I need to go. I need to go make a name for myself. I need to go win a lot of battles. I need to go conquer the bad guys so that everybody loves me. And he goes out to the border and he starts fighting in some battles. He doesn't really have the best record. He doesn't appear to be a very good general. Apparently he's way better at the fast talking, slippin' Jimmy kind of situation. If you've seen Better Call Saul, which we just finished, by the way, last night. We finished up the last season of Better Call Saul. It was a pretty good show. I like it a lot. The ending was not what I expected it to be, but it was a very fitting ending, and I think it wrapped up the story very nicely. It was a bit slow at the end, but that's okay, because the whole show is basically breakneck pace, so a properly paced show probably seemed slower than it actually was. Anyway, good show. You should watch it if you like Breaking Bad. Or even if you don't like Breaking Bad, watch it anyway. It's fine by itself. So he gets out there. He doesn't have a very good record. And he decides, okay, look, here's the deal. Maybe what I need is to just go ahead and start figuring out how I'm going to take over. How does one take over? Well, he starts working on like this new plan. He's got this new plan. And he decides, I'm going to take a bunch of soldiers that we've captured. Now, one of the things that the Chinese did a lot was, instead of, going up in some of these border areas and getting a whole bunch of people and killing them, they would sort of capture them and sort of push them into military service as a way of, filling in the ranks here, because there were fights going on all over the place, and you need soldiers and you need men that can fight, right? So he takes a lot of these prisoners of war and he kind of gives them this opportunity. He's like, look, here's the deal. I'm not Chinese. You all know that I'm not Chinese, but I'm in a position of power here. And I, as this position of power, I can make you promises that have legit backing. And if you fight with me, we're going to do great things. And specifically here, he makes this force of, he basically creates an entire army, but none of them are Chinese. They're all these different groups of people from multiple different ethnic backgrounds that had been captured by the Chinese, and he was sitting at their head. And these people were a legit fighting force. They were apparently very, very scary and very good at doing what they were doing. And it turns out that when you give him really good troops, he's not the worst general. They can sort of even make up for his downfalls. And so he gets a pretty good chunk of an army. And he decides, well, what do I need is some fortifications. I need some forts. And so he starts building forts. And this is when some of his neighboring people, like the other generals that are around him, they start going, this guy's up to something. And they start sending word back to the emperor going, hey, An Lushan's over here, and he's like, he's about to do something dumb, and he's about to rebel. And they're like, and the emperor's like, that guy? Oh no, he's too fat to rebel. No, leave that guy alone. He's really cool. I like him. I gave him a promotion. He's got my confidence. Just if he's doing it, it's the right thing to do, and he has my full support. So don't mess with him. And they're like, no, for real, this guy's bad news. And the emperor's like, y'all are just being crazy. Go fight your own battles, right? And so then An Lushan has his own personal army. But he's also, again, he's in control of a big Chinese army. And the problem with that is the officers below him are all Chinese. And so he writes a letter to the emperor laying out this really big explanation. He's like, look, I'm doing good things here on the border. I'm winning battles. I'm keeping the territory safe. I'm doing what I need to do. And all of these Chinese generals are jealous of me because I'm better friends with you than they are. And they won't do what I tell them to do. And all of the times that I have had setbacks, it's because I tell them to do something and then they disobey my orders. So here's what I would like for you to do. If it's cool with you, I would like for you to recall all of these officers. And there were I think 40 of them or maybe 30 of them. That's a lot. 30, 40 officers. I need you to recall all of these. And then I'm going to pick people from my elite army and put them in as leaders of this Chinese army because these people are ones that I fought with and they're going to do what I told them to do. And the emperor's like, oh yeah, no problem, dude. Just I'll call them back right now. So he calls all of these people back. And then he allows An Lushan to put all of his own people in charge of the Chinese army. So now he's got two armies, and he just mushes them together, and now they're all under control and command of people that are loyal to him. And you see where this is going, right? So the ministers of the court get really sketchy about this, and they go, we've got to go get this dude. We've got to go look at what he's doing. He's about to rebel. And the emperor's like, he's not going to rebel. How many times do I have to tell y'all he's not going to rebel? So some of the imperial ministers kind of go against the emperor's will, and they just go up to see what An Lushan is doing. And he manages to bribe them and goes why don't y'all just go back home? And they're like, well, we're kind of worried about what you're doing up here, and we kind of feel like you're not really keeping the emperor's best interest at heart. And he goes, okay, look, how about this? How about I give you a whole bunch of money for the emperor? Wink, wink, right? And I'm going to give you this giant chunk of money for the emperor. Wink, wink. And he doesn't know how much it is, but I'm sure that if this got down to him, wink, wink, he would know that I was on his side. And the ministers are like, oh, you're just going to give us a crap ton of money and we're going to give him part of it. We're going to pocket the rest of it. And he's like, I didn't say that, So he buys off the ministers. And when they get back to the capital, he decides to launch his rebellion. And this is a big one. So this is the An Lushan rebellion. And this starts in 755 and it runs until 763. This is one of the periods of time in history where people just kind of forget about stuff. This might not be anything that you've ever heard of before, but the An Lushan Rebellion is one of the most deadly wars in history. And I'm not saying that to just blow smoke up. This potentially killed more people than World War I. the low-end estimates for the number of people killed in the Anlushan rebellion is about 10 or 11 million people. But that's the super low-end conservative estimates. The more dramatic estimates go up to 36 million people, which is, like World War II. So what the devil is happening with this particular war? Well, it starts up in the north, because this is where Anlushan is set up here in the north. And he's going to start marching southward. And when he starts invading, people immediately go, oh crap, this is bad. He's got this big army, and they're really good at fighting. They had honed their battle tactics. They really knew what they were doing. And he doesn't really like to take prisoners. He doesn't really like to leave Chinese generals alive. He does allow some of the troops to switch over to his side if they end up, pledging loyalty and do all of this stuff. But he really is going pretty full bore, kill everything in my way. If you don't really fall in line very quickly, you don't get a lot of second chances with this guy. And he kills a lot of people in this invasion. He gets down to the old capital of Luoyang, which used to be the old imperial capital. At that point, it was just a provincial capital. And he takes that, and he's going to declare himself the emperor of a new dynasty. And that is the Yan dynasty, or who Yan it be now, because I have to do bad puns. So the Yan dynasty, he's going to declare himself emperor. He's got an imperial capital. Now it's an old one, right? But it's an old capital, but it checks out. And from there, he's going to begin expanding his territory. So he's going to take basically this whole northern chunk up here. He's going to expand up towards the Uyghur territory and over here towards the Tibetan territory. And he starts moving down this way. And he basically takes this whole northern chunk of China right here. In the process, he's going to end up defeating a lot of the really big Chinese generals and killing them. And once he solidifies his control over the north, he decides, well, we're just going to keep going south. And he gets to the actual imperial capital of Chang'an. And when he gets there, it's bad. So much so that Xuanzang has to retreat from the capital. And at that point, when Anlushan gets into the capital, he massacres everybody there. And he burns most of the city, kills maybe millions of people. The population of Chang'an at that point was really high. It would have not been surprising for multiple millions of people to live either in the city or in the surrounding urban sprawl area. And they get killed a lot. And this is really bad because what he's trying to do during this time is basically kill so many people that the Tang dynasty under Xuanzang can't field an army that could go after him. It's really, really bad. Now, there's going to be a bit of a resistance that gets organized, and it doesn't really do too terribly much. So much so that in the process of this big retreat from the capital, Xuanzang is going to get separated from his son. So his son, the crown prince, ends up having to go one way, and Xuanzang is going to end up having to go other way. And at this point, a lot of people that were in his son's retinue thought that the emperor Xuanzang had died or been taken in the massacre of the city. And they said, all right, kid, you've got to be emperor now. And so they declared him emperor, and he's only emperor for a very short period of time, but his name is Suzong. And it takes a while for communication to get kind of set back up. But when they finally do get back in touch with each other, Xuanzang is like, okay, look, you can go ahead and still be emperor. I'll just be like retired emperor. I'll still be in charge of things. But what Xuanzang seems to have been hoping was that if An Lushan caught Xuanzong, that he would just kill Xuanzong and maybe let his son live and like just sort of rule with his son as a puppet. That is not what An Lushan would have done. An Lushan would have killed both of them. This guy is not really into taking prisoners. Again, he murders a lot of people, and this war just continues to grow and basically starts causing not only massive amounts of death in the northern part of the country here, but the ripple effects of him killing so many people starts to spread with the lack of food production. Because again, the people that are dying here are the foot soldiers in the army, and those come from people that were impressed into the army itself, right? So there were farmers that were just doing regular farming things, but when the military comes by, guess what? You're packing up and you're going to fight the front lines. So this is going to snowball and create a really big famine, and it's going to have a big repercussion on the food supply. And An Lushan is not, he's not playing, right? He wants to be emperor and he wants to be in charge of everything. Now, he's also going to kill a lot of the royal family members. So not all of the royal family got out of the capital. He kills a lot of them, especially a lot of the women, which was seen as a sort of bad juju kind of move. You usually don't kill, daughters of the emperor. But again, An Lushan isn't Chinese. He does things the way that he wants to, and he kills everybody that's a potential threat to him. Now, about this time when he had taken sort of, again, this larger chunk of northern China here, he is going to go back to Luoyang and sort of like try to set up his imperial apparatus. And he's going to make his son crown prince in order to, this kid can take over. But then he's going to get really convinced of his own brilliance, and he's going to turn into the tyrant that he always was. And he's not a good ruler. He's a belligerent drunk. He beats on people a lot. The history that we have talks about him sitting in, meetings with his ministers, and when they don't give him answers that they like, he just starts literally physically beating them. And eventually it gets to the point where his son, who was potentially the target for even more, verbal and physical abuse than the other people, because he was supposed to be toughened up to be the emperor, right? His son decides that An Lushan's got to go. And what ends up happening is that his son waits until his dad's not paying attention, and his son grabs up a sword and just starts hacking on him. And this is kind of gross, but again, this is sort of the how fat is he? Apparently, it took him multiple blows with the sword before he was able to cut An Lushan deep enough to hit his organs. Because I guess he's, cutting through the fat. So anyway, An Lushan ends up getting murdered by his own son, but that doesn't mean that the war is over, because the Yan dynasty is still around. And the war continues. So he dies in 758, but the war continues until 763. And at this point, the war had just caused massive amounts of destruction, untold numbers of deaths. And let me talk a little bit about this, the problem that we have with calculating the deaths. A lot of the speculation and a lot of the reckoning of how many people this killed is based on Chinese census data from before the rebellion and then Chinese census data after the rebellion. And if you look at how many households reported income for taxation purposes, because back then census data was only taken to determine things like how much tax you should pay. So if you look at the number of households that were paying taxes and how many people were in those households, and you look at it from before and you look at it to after, there are some 36 million people missing. Now, does that mean they're all dead? I don't think so. Now, some people go, the only reason that they're not there is because they're dead. And a lot of people say that the Anlushan Rebellion is one of, it killed 36 million people. I don't know if we can say that conservatively and be accurate. I'm sure someone already said this, but the freeze-dried orange drink, yeah, no, it's not Tang, it's Tong. But yes, that was a frequent joke last time, but nobody said it this time. So you get the badge of punnery for this particular stream. Anyway, what we can say is we know that the capital city was wrecked. We know that a lot of the smaller cities were wrecked. 10 million is a very, very, very conservative estimate of how many people died. I would, if I had to choose a number, I don't know what number I would pick, but I would say it's probably between the two. So whatever we're looking at here, this is a rebellion that's more deadly than World War I. World War I had about 10 million people dead. So this is something that killed more people than World War I. And I bet that very few people have ever heard of it before. Because, again, we don't get, we don't get a lot of Asian history. You got to head out to get food. Maybe you'll be back before then. All right, Kyle, good to see you, my friend. Thanks for hanging around while you could. I hope the food is good. I hope it's a tasted meal. Anyway, so this is a pretty big situation. Anyway, the emperor, though, has to deal with all of this stuff, and he's going to end up dying, and his son, Suzong, is going to end up not being in power for too terribly long. But the guy that is going to end up getting rid of these people is Emperor Daizong. Ooh, I didn't show you this. So this is a big marker for Xuanzong's tomb. They have these big, cool lion things. Lumpy's got to head out too. All right, Lumpy, good to see you, my friend. Hope you have a good one. All right, so this is the tomb of Xuanzong, where he's buried. But this guy is Daizong. And he is going to be the emperor that is going to sort of finally end the Anlushan Rebellion. Sometimes it's referred to as the Anxi Rebellion because the guy that ends up taking it over at the end is an emperor that calls himself Xi. But this is going to be a pretty big thing. And this goes all the way until 763. So the Yan dynasty gets finally defeated, and Emperor Daizong is going to finally reunite all of China in 763. So what does Daizong do? Well, what do you do at this point? He's got really big problems. China's in bad shape. The political situation is in bad shape. The population is in dire straits. The food situation is beyond dire. And when China is weak, guess what? All of those countries around you that don't like you are going to take the opportunity to invade, especially here, Tibet. Tibet is going to begin moving into Chinese territory with really big armies. And they're going to start chunking off entire provinces from the Chinese territory. Specifically, they're going to be targeting these northern territories up here. This sort of western northern stretch, that big arm that kind of reached out from central China. Tibet is going to start gobbling all of this up. And there's not really much that Daizong can do. He does manage a couple of victories. One of them was substantial enough that he convinces the emerging Uyghur Khaganate to switch over to his side instead of fighting with the Tibetans. So that's part of it. But he's got really big problems. There are constant issues with these these generals, especially the generals that weren't Chinese, the generals that were Chinese were potentially trying to kill him. There are a lot of people that are kind of out for blood. Tibet wagered that they had a good time to roll the dice. Well, they picked a good moment to strike. And Daizong is in such bad position that he basically has to turn into an iron-fisted dictator for a little while. He starts killing a lot of people. If you wrong him, he's going to put you on trial and kill you, or basically demand that you commit suicide. And this is going to be pretty rough. And as noted, he probably felt pretty bad for this, because somewhere around this time, he's going to basically go all in on Buddhism. And we've seen this before in other countries. When things get bad, you go pray, right? And he's going to go all in on Buddhism, and he's even going to bring some of the big Buddhist monks into the court and give them high positions. This is the same kind of thing that we saw happening in Korea, same kind of thing that we saw happening in Japan. So that's not isolated to those areas. Buddhism at this particular period of time was seeing a very big swell of support in regional governorships and things like that. So Daizong is going to hold on for as long as he can, but he's not really going to rule that long. He rules in front. He picks up at 762, but he's out by 779, and he is organized enough to at least leave the throne to his son. So Daizong is going to hand off to Dezong, and Dezong looks like this. So here we go, Emperor Dezong. Now, he inherits the problems of his father. The biggest problem is Tibet. Tibet is just gobbling up provinces after provinces. They end up taking another one from him at the beginning of his reign. And he has to go to Tibet, and this is super humiliating, right? He has to go to Tibet and say, like, look, what can we do to get some peace? Like, we've got to have peace on this border. And Tibet goes, give us this province and we'll be happy, and we'll stop fighting. And the emperor goes, fine, just take the province, because they couldn't fight, right? The Chinese couldn't really continue to field armies big enough to deal with the Tibetan armies. The Tibetan armies were sending like 30,000 and 50,000 and 70,000 men into China, and China just didn't have the manpower to keep up with that. They were in really dire situations. So once he gets peace with Tibet, then he decides, okay, we've got to rebuild the country. And like physically here, we've got to rebuild, because a lot of stuff had been just wrecked in the An Lushan rebellion. Cities had been burned. The armies had been decimated. This countryside was just a mess. So we need money, and we need to rebuild the country. So if you're the emperor, how do you get money? Well, you do that three-letter word that everybody hates. That's right. You tax the crap out of people. And oh boy, did this not go over very well. He even went so far as to make a tax on any sale that involved cash or any exchange of cash. So if you went, this is basically one of the world's first sales taxes, where if you bought something with money, you had to pay a tax on it. And this did not go over well. He made a whole bunch of new land taxes, and specifically here, he made it really hard for nobles to dodge taxes. He ended up creating a sort of a two-tiered tax structure where people that were not noble had to pay taxes, but the nobles had to pay taxes too, and he had kind of a special structure for them that they couldn't weasel out of. They couldn't find the loopholes to get out of. Indeed, taxes indeed. This does not go well. They do not like this at all. And they don't like this so much that only 3 years after Daizong takes over, there's a rebellion. A group of high-ranking generals especially these border generals, get together and they go, you know what? We just don't like you. And we really don't think that you can do anything if we rebel. So the three big generals got together, and in 782, they rebelled. And China was in bad shape because three provinces with three whole armies rebel. That's three armies that they didn't have then. So now we're stretching even thinner to try to put down this rebellion. And Daizong has to, and this is, again, super humiliating, he has to go to Tibet. And he sends word to the Tibetans, and he's like, look, we're friends now, right? And the Tibetans are like, yeah, okay, we're friends. And he goes, I need you to help me with this rebellion. And they go, oh, well, you know, that's not really our problem. We're sorry that you're having a problem, but it's not really our issue. I don't see how this is our issue. And Daizong goes, what do you want? And this, by this point, Daizong had been run out of the capital by this rebellion. So he's sort of like even now negotiating from even lower levels of power because he's not even in the capital. And Tibet goes, we'd like another province. We'd specifically like this border province right here. If you'd give us this province, we'll put you back on the throne. And China's like, fine. And so they're like, okay, cool. So Tibet sends an army over, and they put him back in control of the capital, and they kind of quiet down the rebellion, and they kill all the leaders. And then Tibet goes back, and they send word like, okay, cool, we need you to turn over that province now. And Daizong is like, about that. I lied. I'm not going to give you this province. And Tibet's like, all right, fine. And for the next 20 years, about 20 years. For the next 20 years, Tibet consistently takes land away from China. And they're taking provinces, they're taking sometimes big cities, but by the end of 800, by the way, I'll show you this. This is outside of Daizong's tomb. These big, like, gozer-looking dogs. Anyway, so that's outside of his tomb. By the time we get to 800, this is what's left of China. And at one time, they controlled all of this, right? So if we go back to this, right? Like laying down into here, land all the way over in here. Now they're down to just this. And here are the Uyghurs. Look how big the Tibetans have become. The Tibetans at this point are bigger than China. And that's kind of the story of the 800s. China is going to be diminished pretty badly here at the end of the 7th century. I'm sorry, the 8th century. It's messy for them. And this is kind of like the big dog Tibetan Empire here. They're pretty powerful at this point. Alrighty. So there you go. That is Tang Dynasty China in the 8th century. Lots of ups and downs, lots of quick changes of leadership and assassination. China goes through a brief golden age only to fall apart just a few decades later, which is unfortunately the way that things go a lot in China. You have these really powerful periods of time, and they get too big and they can't control their territory, and these generals rebel and it causes all this trouble, and it's messy times, but it's interesting times, right? You see how fast things can change from ages of peace where there's artistic expression and there's really cool advances in things, and then you look 20 years later and everything is falling apart. So this period of time in China is I really like Tang Dynasty China. If we look at all of like Chinese history, Tang Dynasty China is one of my favorite periods. I quite like it quite a bit. But that is all that I had planned. But as always, we don't necessarily have to run away right now. If you have any questions about this stuff, I'd be happy to answer. If there are any point redemptions that you want to make, I would be happy to do so. Otherwise, we can go look for somebody to raid. We can see who's on, and then go do a raid. I'll drink some tea. I do quite like tea. All right. Wow. Rather small crowd tonight, but that's okay. Not everybody can show up all the time. And I have fewer followers than I did before the stream started. That's discouraging. Maybe somebody heard that I was talking bad about historical China, and they're like, forget this guy. Good times. All right. Well, not seeing anything, I think we're gonna go do a raid, and I think we'll go. I think we'll go raid Aristotle because he's been very kind giving us the raids lately, and we rarely get to raid him. So we'll go bring our lovely followers over to hang out with Eris for a little while. But I hope you all have a great night, and I hope that the world gives you a wonderful weekend. Yeah, the map is that. I think that's like that's the one thing that you could do. Like, look how big they were, and then look how small they were. The visual aids are good stuff, right? And I appreciate that, Indiana Jones. I hope you're having a good night too. As always, there's a pretty good chance that I'll be around this weekend to do some Gundam stream stuff. Our next scheduled stream is going to be this coming Tuesday. It'll be a viewer request on the history of unions in America. So where did the unions start? Where do they stand now? That kind of stuff. So that'll be pretty interesting if you like organized labor. And we'll talk about how all of the unions got labeled as communist sympathizers and all that stuff during the Cold War. But that'll be fun. And then if you come back next Thursday, we'll be doing a little bit of the similar material, but we're going to be coming at it from the Tibetan perspective, because their story is, while Tang Dynasty China is fascinating and I really love it, the Tibetans are actually like they're the good story, because they go from like weep to like they're really cool during this period, and I'm looking forward to next week talking about Tibet. Jimmy Hoffa is in the ground somewhere, either in concrete where dirt can't, or where worms can't get to him, or he is dirt because he has been worm poop. But he is in the ground somewhere. Are you okay with the idea of your students finding your stream? If they did, I wouldn't care, but I don't broadcast that. I don't share with them that I stream on Twitch. It's not something that I go tell them to come watch. I've had a few that have figured it out, and they're mostly pretty cool about it. So I teach here the same way that I teach in class, so it's not like they're going to get some deep dark side of me that nobody sees. If you take one of my classes, you're going to get the same version of me. I might be a little bit more goofy here just because it's a little bit more okay. I might tell one or two more bad jokes here or make one or two more horrible puns than I would normally make, but it's the same situation. The thing here is that I don't talk about this stuff as much when I teach World Civ, because there's not enough time. There's just not enough meetings and hours in a World Civ class to cover a true version of world history. You have to sort of just hit the tops of the wave crests and hope that people can interpolate the rest of the material that's there. which is one of the reasons why I love streaming so much, because we get to talk about this cool stuff and we get to cover the things that you don't hear about, like the An Lushan Rebellion. You know, this war that killed tens of millions of people, likely. So, you know, it's history, because history is not just, you know, World War One, World War Two, and it's not just Rome and Greece and Egypt. It's history. There's a lot of stuff in between, and the stuff that's in between is what gets us to these wave crest points, right? So, anyway, and I just realized that I typed Emperor Daezong instead of Emperor. Or I am not typing well today. My typing skills are like particularly bad. All right. Anyway, let's go do a raid. We're going to hit this raid over to Aristotle. Show Aris some love. He's a really smart guy. He's a fellow college teacher. He teaches philosophy and ethics. Really, really smart guy. And you'll enjoy his stream because he's a goofball like I am. And we'll have a good time over there. So yell adventure when we get in, and have a good weekend if I don't see you until the next time. As always, just take care of yourselves and love somebody and love yourself too. And until next time, my friends, have a good one, right?